Right. Um, there was a study done on 2 consecutive days of refeeds. So the bulking up way. So at the moment, because of my workload, I was obviously having a Wednesday and a Sunday as a rest day.
Mm-hmm.
Just because during the week I was that active, so we needed to break the workouts up instead of working out Monday to Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you think it'd be for recovery for myself to actually work out the full 5 days, Monday to Friday, and then have the Saturday, Sunday as my recovery days? Do you think would it help? Would it help what I'm trying to achieve or not?
Sure. So I'll go ahead and address this, and Cassidy and Gillis, if you guys want to jump in after me in case I might forget anything. But I completely understand what your question is, and I think that the importance of understanding the literature and science is to understand when we actually apply the literature and the science, which whatever makes the best sense at that specific moment in time. So with the back-to-back refeed study, the premise of the study was essentially to see who could preserve the most lean body mass, who could preserve metabolic function, and I guess kind of compare two groups. Group A being a 25% calorie deficit for 7 days in a row for 7 weeks. And then group B being a 35% calorie deficit Monday through Friday with 100% refeeding at predetermined maintenance level Saturday and Sunday. And the outcome, just so that everyone knows, the outcome was that the 25% calorie deficit group over the course of 7 weeks lost almost 3 pounds of body mass with no refeeds. 3 pounds of lean body mass. If any of you guys have gone to the grocery store lately and looked at what 3 pounds of beef looks like, that's a lot of beef, okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would never want to sacrifice that amount of lean tissue, specifically because they only checked, this research study was only checked over 7 weeks. Who diets for 7 weeks? Nobody diets for 7 weeks. People diet for double and triple that amount of time. So if you think about this in correlation to metabolic function, hormone function, metabolic rate, ability to preserve lean body mass, you could lose upwards of 8, 9, 10 pounds of lean body mass during a normal dieting phase or competition prep. Now, what we have to compare that to is the latter, which is back-to-back refeeds, which, again, was 5 days consecutive 35 calorie deficit, 100% refeeding at caloric maintenance to recover on the weekends. And that group lost 0.8 pounds of lean body mass over the course of 7 weeks. So if we multiply that by 2, multiply that by 3, it doesn't even yield 2.5 pounds of lean body mass loss. So if we're actually comparing the physiological effects of lean body mass at the end of a deficit, and we're looking at 10 pounds of lean body mass lost in client A versus 2.5 pounds of lean body mass lost in client B, which one is going to have the best metabolism at the end of the fat loss phase? It's going to be the person who has the most muscle, right, Gil? So with that being said, application is everything. So you guys know that I love using back-to-back refeeds. I love using diet breaks. I like to really hone in on preserving muscular tissue at all costs during a fat loss phase. And this is how we do it. We essentially have to make sure that we are mitigating the psychological and physiological adaptations that happen during a caloric deficit. And we do this by using diet breaks, refeed dates, strategically planning those out based on specific factors of the client, such as their body fat level at the time, what their weekly schedule looks like, what they actually enjoy or prefer, and then obviously thinking futuristically and planning in diet breaks specifically before the client may not even need them. Just because we are thinking futuristically and we're thinking that if we want to avoid metabolic adaptation 12 weeks from now, it's a good idea to offset that now, not wait until we have to use it, okay? Now, in regards to you, Gary, and I know that was a mouthful, but in regards to you, since we are focusing on trying to build muscle, in my opinion, carbohydrate cycling with the intention to build muscle should only be utilized if we are really trying to focus on making sure we can keep optimized like insulin sensitivity factors there. Because if we are loading carbohydrates on days you're not doing anything, you could bet assured that your fasted blood sugar is going to be higher on Monday because you loaded 1,200 grams of carbohydrates Saturday and Sunday when you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'll go ahead and I'll stop my piece there. If either Cassidy or Gillis want to talk a little bit more about the ins and the outs of that, I would love to hear what you guys have to say in regards to the application of 48-hour refeeds and diet breaks.
And I think that, like with Will said it best when you're talking about blood sugar levels and what your fasting levels are. I think when anyone that's trying to put on muscle and we're kind of putting more and more calories in there, carbohydrate intake in there, I think it's a great idea to continuously use a glucometer to check those things to make sure that those levels aren't going super high, because it does us no good if we're, like Will said, if we're doing 1,200 grams of carbs in 48 hours, but our insulin levels are super high through the roof. That just doesn't, that gives us some feedback that your body isn't even utilizing the carbohydrate efficiently anyway, so there would be no point in bringing the carbohydrates that high. But doing it more of a slower process, making sure that those blood sugar levels aren't really going very high and you're staying very efficient with carbohydrate utilization, then and kind of take it from there, because that's going to allow, I think, where true muscle tissue is going to come without sacrificing or accumulating any kind of excessive body fat while you're in the process of doing that.
I would say on like the dieting side of it too, with a lot of people, like the clients we work with generally come from backgrounds where they're used to like crash dieting all the time, and they're very used to like, you know, constantly suffering. So for me with my clients, like getting them to understand that like these back-to-back refeeds are important, even if we, like Will said, we don't need them essentially right now. It's important to set yourself up through that process and almost essentially like schedule your diet out, where like on paper you could look at it week after week and see those refeeds plugged in, because that's going to give them the best result over time physically and mentally. Not crash dieting for 10 weeks, then oh crap, you know, like I have all these negative adaptations, we have to try to fix it now. Like that doesn't work. Preventative measures always work way more than trying to essentially fix something that's already broken, because that's a lot harder on the client, and then the result's not going to be as great. So I guess getting them to understand and getting you guys to understand that like we put these practices in place for your health first and foremost, and the results will come over time. It's, you know, you're not going to be any more advantage losing 10 pounds in 3 weeks versus, you know, doing things the right way and losing that 10 pounds over time. So you got to think long-term health, not just the short-term transformations that you might see online, you know, from coaches that aren't really implementing good practices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys. So Cassidy, awesome job. Gil, awesome job. Everybody, thank you so much for your questions. I'm really happy that, you know, we were actually able to wrap up with like some in-depth science-related stuff that you guys can actually kind of take and utilize, and that'll elevate your education regarding, you know, when to use refeeds, fasted